Hello there, the top stories from Sky News Live in the city. The first review of the Green List. The travel industry waits for changes to quarantine-free holiday destinations. Supermarket giant Tesco loses a key legal case in the European Union over equal pay. Stick to the timetable. A group of MPs says the government must ease restrictions on the 21st of June to save the pub industry. And a £1.5 billion development in Manchester to help science and innovation businesses create thousands of new jobs. Hello there, a very good morning to you. Watching Ian King Live with me, Emma Crosby. An hour of business and economic news from the heart of the city. There are less than a handful of mainstream holiday destinations on the government's quarantine-free green list. And a little later on today, we're going to find out if there's going to be any changes at all. Likely to be a very few additions, if any. Spain's Balearic Islands are a possibility. There's even speculation that Portugal, which has been the most popular country for British holiday makers so far, could come off the green list onto the amber list. It all leaves the UK's travel and tourism industry facing more uncertainty and a longer road back to any form of recovery. Let's get more now from our esteemed guest. Joining me is Alan French, Chief Executive of Thomas Cook, and we're also joined by Noel Josephides a little later on. He is Director of the Association of Independent Tour Operators. But Alan, let's start with you first. What movement are you expecting, if any, from these travel lists today?
I think we're probably hoping that we'll see some of the islands go green. And we're clearly hoping that Portugal will remain on green. And any clarity beyond that would be great.
I mean, Portugal could go back on the amber list, apart from being very confusing for everyone. Financially, what kind of impact is that going to have on the industry?
Yeah, that would certainly be a pretty negative impact on the industry. But, I mean, looking at the bigger picture, it was only 2.5 weeks ago that it went green. And, you know, I'm sure that the government had looked at what numbers were underpinning that and what the likely impact of that was. So we're hoping that that's not going to be the case.
So you're suggesting a smattering of islands, as you say. You're talking, I think, about the Greek islands, potentially the Balearic Islands, but not the Canary Islands, not mainland Spain, not mainland Greece, two really important destinations for your industry. Do you think the government have got the right strategy in being very cautious about what they put on the green list?
Well, I mean, firstly, we would expect by the time that the bulk of the holiday makers start to travel, which is really beginning of July through August, to have the big Mediterranean countries on sale and be able to allow customers to travel to them. So I'm expecting the Greek mainland and the Spanish mainland to come on. It would be great if we had
time, though, Alan. Are customers happy and willing to wait really until the very last minute to book their holidays abroad?
I don't think they're happy to, but they're certainly willing to. What we are seeing is a lot of last-minute activity. As soon as something comes onto the green list, tremendous amount of activity. We're seeing a lot of people researching things before that, but they're not booking it until it comes onto green. So I think people are willing to wait until the last minute before they make the call. And the market's there. So it's not like the prices are massively increasing as we go towards the summer. People are still able to get a good deal on last-minute package holidays.
But for you, as a boss of a travel operator, which is now an online operator, how difficult is it to run a business in these constantly shifting sands?
I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. To be fair, when we relaunched the new Thomas Cook business in September of last year, we knew it was going to be in a volatile market. And we set ourselves up to be able to respond quickly. That doesn't mean it's necessarily always easy to respond to what the government changes are, but we are expecting the government decisions to be signalled and as far in advance as they can do that, to allow our customers to be able to travel safely and sensibly.
And do you think the government strategy, which seems to be with an abundance of caution rather than following the data, because if they follow the data, I think the green list would be a lot bigger, is that the right strategy?
Well, I'm not sure I've seen all of the data that the government's using to base its decisions on. We in the travel business would like to see as many destinations open up as possible, but we don't want to see destinations shut down after they've opened up. So from us, we would like as many destinations as is possible to open up. We'd like that to be done in a transparent fashion. We'd like to be able to see what the criteria are that's used for that assessment. But equally, we want those destinations to remain open once they're open.
And is that happening for you? Are you getting enough transparency? What more could the government do to support you? Because you're an industry that's, quite frankly, on your knees.
No, that's true. And I think that what we'd really like is an understanding of the criteria by which countries are assessed so that we can determine that they're likely to come on green or what the criteria are for them moving around. I think that'd be very helpful for us.
And as of yet, that's not available, is that right?
Not completely, no.
OK. Given that variants are here to stay, Alan, we're talking about a variant from Nepal this morning that could also derail plans to go abroad. What, in your opinion, is a better solution, do you think, to allow safe travel on a more permanent basis?
Well, I do think that vaccine passports and the ability to be able to allow people who've been vaccinated to travel more freely, because the risk is a great deal less than those who haven't been. And I'm expecting to see some news on that coming through. I think coordination with our core markets is also something that we in the travel industry would really want. And particularly as most of Europe starts to coordinate its travel policies in the next month with some documentation, that would be really helpful for the UK to be involved in that.
Because variants are here to stay. This is a new way of life, some people are saying. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, the variants are here to stay. The good news is that the vaccination program seems to be working against the vast majority of them, that the vaccination in both the UK and our destinations are progressing at pace. So long term, we are pretty confident. But you're right, there are going to be short-term hiccups and we need to be able to cope with them.
We are hearing as well about concerns of the ability for destinations to do big, large-scale testing for Brits abroad to then come back. Are you hearing anything about that in terms of problems with testing abroad?
I'm not hearing about any problems testing abroad. I was in Portugal the week before last. The infrastructure there seemed pretty solid. They were able to scale pretty much. I had a look at some of their testing facilities. So that wasn't a concern that I saw raised was out there.
OK, and we're also hearing concerns about massive queues on the way home, up to 4 hours waiting at the border to get back into the UK. That's not good enough, is it?
No, and I would say that, again, I was out of Portugal the week before last. Coming back was relatively straightforward. A number of colleagues and people in the industry who travelled also found that. But as travel opens up, I would expect the government to help the industry by allowing technology to help us, particularly look at the documentation that needs to be taken both as people leave the country and as they come back into the country. So I'd expect...
Just briefly, Alan, are you planning to go abroad for your holidays this summer?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
OK. Well, good luck with that. Thank you very much for joining us, Alan French, the Chief Executive of Thomas Cook.
Thank you.
Well, if jetting off on holiday seems unachievable at the moment, you might console yourself with being able to go to the pub at least here in the UK. For many pubs and other hospitality businesses, the next date for the easing of restrictions here on the 21st of June is crucial. That's because social distancing measures would go and the capacity of venues would return to normal, allowing them to take more money and hopefully, for the majority of them, return to some form of profit. Now, a group of MPs says the government must stick to the timetable despite fears about rising cases back here in the UK. Joining me now is MP Mike Wood, who is the chair of the all-party parliamentary beer group. We're also joined this morning by Kelly McCarthy, who is the landlady of Ye Old Sun Inn pub in Colton in North Yorkshire. Welcome to you both. Kelly, let's start with you. Great to have you on the programme this morning. What a year you've had as well as landlady. How is business right now?
Thanks. Hi. Business at the moment is doing okay. We opened 12th of April. We've got a great outdoor space, and yeah, it was manic for a couple of weeks. The weather obviously didn't help after that, being such miserable rain. But obviously, once we got to May 17th and we could open indoors, it meant a different group of clientele were able to come out and see us. The older generation that had probably gone through the vaccination were able to come back out and see us again. But we're kind of seeing it plateau out a little bit because obviously that little bit of rush is gone. So we do need sort of to get moving again.
So we can see some of the social distancing measures that you've put in place behind you, Kelly. You've got a screen up there by where people are probably buying their drinks, signs saying come in and out in various ways. I mean, how important is the 21st of June for you to be able to take these signs down and operate a pub as you were doing pre-pandemic?
God, it would be lovely to be able to open the pub without screens, without masks, without insisting on everybody signing in, to have people moving. We just at the moment feel like COVID police, and we just feel that we're not able to do our jobs as well as we have done in the past. And just having screens up there just reduces the amount of communication you can have with customers. There's nobody's allowed to stand at the bar. You can't have that conversation. Just with Joe Bloggers that wants to come in and have a pint at the bar. Where's that gone, and will that come back? That's the difficult thing. We just can't wait.
The atmosphere changes, doesn't it? And I'm sure that the till changes as well. I mean, financially, how important is it for you to be able to go back up to full capacity?
Oh, it's essential. I mean, we've lost so much revenue over the last 14 months. To try and recoup some of that back is going to be nigh on impossible, and it's going to take us a long time to be able to do that. But we need the summer. We need the contingency of being able to open and be able to plan for functions and parties and things. At the moment, I've got so many weddings booked for the summer, much like many hospitality venues across the country. And at the moment, we're waiting for June 21st because, there's so much riding on that. And people have already put parties and functions back a good 14 months, and they need to be able to sort of, enjoy that time and enjoy the pub. And if not, how do we ever get back to some normality?
OK, Kelly, so you are. Let's bring Mike in and get the mood music from Westminster, because Boris Johnson says there is nothing in the data right now to prevent ending domestic restrictions on that 21st of June. Is that your hope, or what are you hearing in the corridors of power that you may or not be pacing amongst right now?
And obviously, you've spoken to the Prime Minister, spoken to the other ministers as well. And 21st of June is so important for really the whole hospitality sector, as Kelly's been saying. Kelly's got a fantastic pubs. Good to see it doing reasonably well the last couple of weeks. There are still a couple of thousand pubs at least that haven't been able to reopen, either because they're too small to have the social distancing measures. They can't do the table service. But there are then tens of thousands more that are operating at a loss. And most pubs expect, even after the restrictions are lifted, to still be operating at a loss, really, for the rest of this year and well into next year. Now, that's nearly 1 million jobs depend on pubs and brewing in the UK. And those businesses can't continue indefinitely operating in a way that they can't make money to pay those wages. And so the whole sector really does depend on being able to get back to something approaching normal.
But would it be a mistake, though, for MPs and politicians to ignore the warnings from scientists only this week saying the potential of a third wave is on a knife edge now?
Look, whenever we lift restrictions, there is going to be a risk. And of course, we have to be cautious about that. People's health, of course, has to come first. But that risk is still there in September or December or even next March. There will still be a risk of new variants coming in from overseas. That won't go away. It's not a question of, if we don't do it on 21st of June, we could perhaps do it on, say, the 5th of July, and somehow we'd be much safer. It wouldn't really apply. And actually, the scientific consensus is they're in a much stronger place than we've been at any point in the last 14, 15 months. And so now is the time to be lifting those restrictions and supporting these sectors and helping them to rebuild. And that's why we're also looking at the issues around beer duty and government support as well, to help them get back onto their feet as they're able to welcome back more.
Keen to get back to Kelly. Kelly, would it matter holding on a few more weeks, given that you've been closed or you've had so many restrictions for so long? And if you do have to hold on, what kind of help or support, targeted support, would you like to see from the government just to help you for a bit longer?
I think we do need the 21st of June. And I think what Mike says, no matter when we decide to lift the restrictions, there's always going to be some other variant, or there's going to be some other issue that's going to sort of be in the background. But for us as a business, for us to move on, it's essential to get those parties that are booked in. And if we don't, we do need that help from the government. And in fact, the government needs to play a big part in helping pubs and the industry to reopen. They need to be sort of publicising the fact that we are a safe place to go. You know, we've covered all of the ground on the COVID regulations. There's no proven scientific evidence to say that it's higher transmissible in pubs. We do need that support. You know, we do need the beer duty cut. We do need the VAT reduction for longer. We do need business rates cut for longer, because we just need a good solid trading to be able to actually get somewhere, just to pay off the debts that we've incurred over the last year.
Well, we look forward to coming and having a drink with you at some point, Kelly. For now, though, thank you very much. The best of luck as well for the summer ahead. Kelly McCarthy there, and Mike Wood, thanks to you as well.
Thank you.
Now, there's going to be a big new development project in Manchester. It's a £1.5 billion scheme to build offices, hotels and homes. It'll focus on creating space for science and innovation businesses. It'll hope to create some 10,000 new full-time jobs. It is a partnership between the University of Manchester, the fund manager Legal & General and science property provider Bruntwood. Let's get the views now of one of those people in charge, Nigel Wilson. He is the Chief Executive of Legal & General, and he joins me on the programme now. Welcome to you. So what is your innovation for this vision for this so-called innovation district?
It's fair to say it's not our vision. It's the vision of the Vice-Chancellor here in Manchester, Nancy Rothwell, has done an amazing job, and our colleagues at SciTech, Bruntwood SciTech, Chris Goldman's being his team. We're just here to help provide pension fund money to be invested wisely in long-term growth in the UK.
Well, you've got the money, so you're a very important person, certainly to say the least. 4 million square feet right in the heart of Manchester. I think it's right next to the Piccadilly station, isn't it? How do you hope it's going to be a great example of urban regeneration?
I think that's a great question, because we want many other cities and universities to recognise that this is achievable in most of them right now. We're underinvested in the UK economy for 30 to 40 years. We have world-leading universities. They're in very prominent cities across the UK. And I'm hoping many other Vice-Chancellors step up and local people become more entrepreneurial, more innovation. And people like ourselves certainly have the capital to invest in projects like this. And as you said, it's £1.5 billion, but we could replicate that many times across the UK and make a really, really big difference to jobs, prospects for young people, levelling up and building back better.
Are two terms that we hear a lot of at the moment, particularly from our politicians. So just explain to me, Nigel, what you think levelling up and building back better mean for you.
Well, we've described that as inclusive capitalism, that we have to use the capital that we have, a lot of which exists here in the UK in pension funds. We look after £1.3 trillion alone, to invest in the modernisation of the economy, but resulting in outcomes which are better for everyone. And, we've seen too much of the wealthy getting wealthier during the pandemic, and not enough real job creation, not just in the last year, but for many, many years. And the government, both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, are very determined, I think, to see the North and other parts of the country, which have fallen behind in the last 20 or 30 years, catch up. And we're here to help by investing some of the money that we have been entrusted to look after by our clients. And Manchester is a great place to invest.
I mean, you say that they're keen to see this, but what should they be doing on the ground in terms of government money, massive infrastructure or taxpayer funding? I mean, you putting your money there, what role should the government be playing?
Well, in issues like this, they've been very supportive in the background, encouraging us all to get together in positive, constructive collaboration.
Financial support or just negotiating?
For projects like this, we don't need financial support. We've got plenty of money to do this sort of project. But areas like Teesside, where Ben and others are trying hard, you need some money to pump prime parts of that. I think parts of Manchester, similarly, you need some government money to pump prime the regeneration that's required. And I'm pretty sure that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and others within government are up for doing that in the next few years. We've seen them move, parts of their infrastructure and people up to Leeds and Darlington even. We need more of that going forward.
OK, we'll leave it there. Nigel, thank you very much for joining us. Nigel Wilson, Chief Executive of Legal and General. Now, thousands of Tesco employees have won a fight in an EU court over equal pay. The dispute was over a pay difference for male employees in the distribution centres and the gap between them and female workers in stores. The advice handed down in the case, which was first brought in 2018 before Brexit, is legally binding over UK law. Well, Sky's Harriet Hadfield joins us now. Harriet, what more can you tell us?
It's really significant. It affects thousands of retail workers, not just at Tesco, but also understanding this against the backdrop of Brexit. Just to explain what happened here, there were 6,000 Tesco employees who were working in the stores. They happened to be mostly women, though not exclusively, and they found that they were being paid less than the predominantly men working in the distribution centres. They brought it to Watford Tribunal in 2018, February 2018, and Watford Tribunal have sent it up to the top court in the EU for them to rule on. What they wanted was equal pay for equal work, and they said that Tesco was in breach of EU and UK law. Tesco had argued that the law was not directly applicable, but the EU, they disagreed. The European Court of Justice principles, they said, are laid out by the law and could be, quote, relied on directly. Now, Brexit meant that they argued that this was still within their jurisdiction in accordance with our withdrawal agreement that we have with the EU. Now, the wider significance of this is that there are other retailers and staff from other retailers, the big five, so Morrison's, Asda, Sainsbury's and Co-op, in addition to Tesco, who have similar lawsuits, all brought by the same legal team called Lead A. And they hope that this is now a decisive decision that will affect all of those cases as well.
OK, Harriet, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Still to come this morning here on Ian King Live, we'll be taking a look at how global markets are starting the day for you. Do stay tuned. Hello there, welcome back. You're watching Ian King Live. Let's have a look at the markets for you now. Mixed session overnight in Asia, with investors pretty cautious ahead of some all-important jobs data out of the United States at lunchtime. Markets remain just below recent highs. The Nikkei in Tokyo was higher, while shares in Hong Kong were down more than 1%. Over to Europe for you now. Similar picture in Europe, where markets are just off record highs achieved earlier in the week. All eyes on economic data coming out there alongside the US numbers. Both the DAX in Germany and the Frankfurt market, the CAC 40 in Paris, are slightly lower this morning, pretty flat though. Let's turn our attention to the London market. That's the FTSE 100 here in the city. Deeper into the red today, moving more than 0.5% lower as the session progresses. And in terms of what's moving higher or lower in terms of individual stocks, leading the board down are National Grid and BT, alongside the DIY retailer Kingfisher, which owns B&Q in the UK. B&M shares also lower today following its results. Fairly quiet day for the pound on the foreign exchange markets this morning. Just about got its head above water, as you can see there, against both the dollar and the euro. And onto the oil price, which has had a stellar run recently. That's up again this morning. A barrel of Brent crude currently setting you back a little bit. We'll just wait for the graphic there. No, the oil's certainly trading at, say, a 2 or 3 year high, and there are real fears of inflation. We'll try and get that oil price for you shortly. In the meantime, let's chat to Fiona Frick. She is Chief Executive of Unigestion. Good to have you on the programme, Fiona. Let's start with those European stock markets. I mean, they are pretty much at record highs. Are they divorced from economic realities in the area?
I wouldn't say they are divorced from economic realities, because the growth in the second part of the year, be it in US or in Europe, will be quite strong, and therefore the stock market reflect that. The problem is, it's true to say that stock markets today are quite expensive in terms of valuation, and there's a risk of inflation, which can be either transient, either more durable, which could put some weight on interest rate coming up. So that's why markets are a bit today waiting for what is the direction. You mentioned the number of unemployment that's coming out tomorrow, which is quite important, because unemployment, if it is a good gauge, if it goes down quite quickly, of a risk of inflation. So I think markets are waiting for some signals from the economic data.
Inflation, certainly in the Eurozone, is above 2%. That's, of course, a very important target. That's the ECB's, the European Central Bank's inflationary target. Does that start to flash red on your own dashboard, or are you comfortable with where it's at?
I would say it's more the US inflation, which is more worrying, because there it's more around 4%. In Europe, it's around 2%, but it's the first time. And most of this increase has been done around oil, and there is still not too much consumption or production inflation. So I would say that we believe that the inflation will be going up, but we hope it will be controlled, because it is not so bad to have a little of inflation. And central bank last year, be it in the US or be it in Europe, has said that 2% is not a hard cap where everything has to change when we reach it. It's a target. And we've been below 2% for so long that we could accept 2% for quite a while. So until it's 2%, 3% is fine. If it goes up beyond that for a long period, that's where we could imagine central bank changing their policy, and therefore interest rate going up, and therefore perhaps equity correcting.
OK, because at some point interest rates will have to go up. When are you predicting a rise?
It's very dependent on inflation. At the end, it will have to go up if inflation stays well above 2% for a long period of time. And before interest rate goes up, then that will be the market that will decide. But there will be several steps in central bank policy. The first one will be to stop buying bonds at the pace they are doing now. And then perhaps they will bring down the shorter term of the yield curve. So I think it can be done in a very steady way, but it will depend on how fast and how strong inflation will rebound from the low.
Fiona, we need to leave it there. Thank you for your thoughts. Fiona Frick joining from Unigestion.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's bring you some breaking news in the last few minutes from West Midlands Police. A man has been charged with the murder of teenager Dear John Reed. The 14-year-old was stabbed in King's Standing on Monday evening. Michael Shields, who's aged 35, from Alvis Walk in Castle Bromwich, will appear at Birmingham Magistrate Courts this morning. More on that when we have it. In the meantime, still to come this morning here on In King Live, I'll be joined by the head of Google for Startups UK as they invest in 30 companies led by Black founders. Stay tuned. Hi there, welcome back. You're watching In King Live. Now, a couple of months ago, we brought you the news that Google for Startups was setting up a fund to give money to new businesses led by Black founders. Well, now we know which businesses. 30 of them are going to get the money, up to $220,000 each. Now, they include a platform for education influencers and a digitised personal training system amplified by biometrics. We'll be finding out exactly what that is in just a few minutes' time. I'm joined by Marta Krupinska, head of Google for Startups UK. We're also joined by Ivan Beckley, founders of Suvera UK. Welcome to the programme. Ivan, congratulations to you too. I know you beat off stiff competition to get this money. What does it mean for you and crucially for your startup?
Well, thank you, Emma. I mean, this is a great opportunity for myself and the startup, and the amount of people that applied is just testament to the talent that's available in Black businesses. For us personally, it's further recognition of what we're doing is important in the world. We're building technology in order to support general practices who are in huge demand to look after patients for long-term care. So I'm super excited and I can't wait for us to get started in the program.
I can tell your enthusiasm is coming right through the TV screens. And Ivan, you've got a really interesting story because you were training as a doctor, is that right? Or certainly in the medical field, and you realised there was a niche in the market and you decided to go for this. Tell us a little bit more about your business.
Absolutely. So I'm training to be a doctor in the NHS. And for me, my experiences are the reflection of what was happening day to day. You know, this year, GPs have seen over 200% of what they were seeing last year. And that demand is only going to continue. And so for my reflection, my journey has been on recognizing how it takes to become a doctor, but also the opportunity to innovate in the system. And so what we're doing is working with practices to identify patients that can be looked after at home. And our service works with them in order to do that. Today, we focus on high blood pressure, which affects 1 in 4 patients in the UK. But tomorrow, we're going to focus on asthma, COPD, and other conditions that we think are adequate to be managed from home.
And goodness knows where you're finding the time if you're doing a training at the same time. And we know, Ivan, that starting up a business is notoriously difficult, isn't it, at any stage of anyone's career. So what are your growth plans? What is your real ambition for your company?
So for us, our ambition is global. You know, we started this company because we recognize this problem exists in the UK, but also exists in every country in the world. So we're starting small by focusing on hypertension as a condition because it affects 25% of the population. But really our trajectory to grow is to produce evidence. So my background in training in medicine is that you're delivering a service in healthcare. You need to have evidence of validation that it does what it says it does. So we'll focus on outcomes of patient satisfaction, of improving health outcomes, but also reducing the cost of care. And so over time, we're using technology to scale that team. And so we're taking it step by step, starting in London and London practices. We've already got some in south of England, but we're looking to move quickly to Asia to address some of that concern elsewhere.
OK, Ivan, stay where you are. Let's bring Marta in now. Really fascinating, isn't it, to listen to Ivan? I'm sure you had a very tough job on your hands from 800 contenders down to just 30. Give us a sense of the breadth of businesses that are coming through that you're looking to support from the Black community.
No, that's fantastic. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to showcase this talent that myself and my fantastic colleagues have been meeting and interviewing over the past many months. So as has been mentioned, we've had almost 800 applications from across Europe, which I think just speaks to the fact that diversity in tech is not a pipeline problem. There is an incredible breadth of talent that's coming through. Of the 800, actually, almost 600 applications came from the UK, which I think speaks to the quality of talent in this country. The 76 interviews with companies yielded the 30 that we are presenting to the world today, obviously Ivan and Suvera being one of them. What I find really important is that, first of all, we're seeing an incredible richness of industries. We've got a fantastic company called Define that innovates in the legal tech space. We've got Scoodle that connect tutors with students. We've got Modularity Grid that's innovating in off-grid energy. So we're really looking at talent coming from all walks of life, serial entrepreneurs, first-time founders, really tackling some of the really big challenges. And what I also find really important is that not only are they representing the racial diversity in tech, and I really believe that if we want technology to work for everyone, it has to be built by everyone, but also we represent an incredible gender diversity. 40% of the founders that we backed are women, and almost 40% of all the staff, the 30 companies we backed, between them make $2 million a month. They employ almost 400 people, and 40% of the 100 people are women. So I'm so delighted to be able to be a part of it.
You seem delighted, Marta, and no doubt there's a huge amount of talent, a rich talent pool, which you will be able to tap into. So surely a company like Google, you've got billions at your disposal. Could you not offer them a bit more money?
Excellent question. I think we're really confident that the work that we're doing here is a step in the right direction, not only for us to continue the work that we've been doing with startups since 2012 in London and around the world, but also to invite other angel investors, venture capital firms, other corporates to join us on this quest. We really believe that with this Black Founders Fund that we've now given away, we're making a strong economic argument to everybody in the ecosystem that investing in Black founders is great business and that they're going to continue.
Final word to you, Ivan, if you don't mind. I mean, do you hope this is the beginning of change? I'm sure you do, where we get an awful lot more venture capital investment going to Black-led startups.
I genuinely believe that this is a catalyst for recognizing businesses that are being built by Black businesses. And I think this is an opportunity to really wake up the ecosystem to recognize that there is talent, that this talent is underfunded, and actually there's an opportunity to drive this forward. If you're an investor and you want returns on your money, then Black businesses and the businesses that Google are backing and others are the ones for you to where you should put that.
OK, well, the best of luck, Ivan. Do come back on the programme and let us know how you're getting on next year. Marta, thanks as well for your time. It is time now for our regular chance to discuss some of the big and some of the more overlooked business stories that have caught our eye on the programme this morning in terms of what's going on in the newspapers. Let's start with the FT leading on its news that the commodity trader Trafigura warns Credit Suisse last year that the Swiss bank's supply chain finance funds appeared to contain a suspicious invoice from Sanjeev Gupta's business empire. The Times business section leads on the US online marketplace Etsy buying British vintage resale site Depop. There's also news of a survey by the Institute of Directors which shows more companies think there is more to business than making profit these days. On to the Daily Telegraph for you now. Business section, of course, says Amazon sales in the UK will eclipse Tesco's in just 4 years' time. The paper says the UK's retail landscape is being transformed by online sales. The country's biggest supermarket will soon be knocked off top spot for the first time in decades. And the Wall Street Journal leads on new cyber attack revelations that are stoking fears over hacking in the United States. New reports of attacks on transport systems in Boston and New York come as hackers held up the world's largest meat processor this week. Try and make some sense on that. The Wall Street Journal's UK and Brexit editor, Stephen Fiddler, joins the programme now. Stephen, good to see you this morning. What has caught your eye this morning?
Well, we have another front page story about what's happening to the US economy. And I think most people recognize that it has bounced back from the pandemic in a serious way. But I think the elements of this bounce back haven't been sort of widely understood. And it really does look very different to what happened after the last big recession in 2007, 2009. In the sense that, we're already talking about the US economy being as big this quarter as it was before the pandemic. So not only has there been a bounce back, it's been so rapid that people have really just haven't expected it. And apart from things like labor shortages and kind of concerns about inflation and, shortages of raw materials, it seems that people's households are in really very good shape in terms of their finances, or at least most of them. Businesses are in much better shape. So it's really quite an extraordinary bounce back that really is taken, I think, a lot of people by surprise. It's like looks more like a sort of bounce back from a natural disaster than from a typical financial crash, if you like.
Still, we've got a long way to go before we get to pre-pandemic levels in terms of the economy. And all sorts of interesting things are happening, aren't they, in terms of the house market, the stock market, inflation coming back. What is your take then on the robustness of the UK economy right now?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, in terms of the UK economy, it's much it's behind the US economy in terms of the bounce back. But we are seeing some similar kind of elements. I think people are already complaining of labor shortages and that kind of thing. We're obviously, there are still, I think, problems relating to trading and in the post-Brexit arrangements of trading with the EU and that kind of thing. So there may be a little more kind of sand in the machine, if you like, in the UK. So I think we'd expect it to be growing slower, although I think most forecasts now suggest very significant growth this year of sort of 7% this year and continuing next year at 5%. But I don't think it's going to go. It's not going quite in the way that the U.S. economy has grown. Having said that, the fact the U.S. economy, the largest economy in the world, is growing faster than people expected, will be good news for the U.K. and other economies in Europe.
We'll leave it there. Stephen, thank you very much. Stephen Fiedler there from the Wall Street Journal. Now, at the top of the show this morning, we talked about possible changes to the UK's government's quarantine-free green list, which are still waiting to hear. In Europe, the EU is working on rules to enable travel across borders, likely to involve its digital green certificate, showing that you've had a vaccine or you have a negative test. There's been a huge focus on possible digital COVID certificates and, of course, no shortage of controversy. U-Birch is part of a consortium led by IBM, which recently won the contract to provide digital certificates in Germany. Let's find out a bit more about this, shall we? We're joined now by Karim Attia, Chief Executive of U-Birch, live from Dubai this morning. Karim, welcome to the programme. So for somebody wanting to travel, how does this technology work?
It's quite easy. So you will have a digital representation of your COVID status, which is totally in line to the requirements of the European Union, which has been published by the Commission in March. So the main difficulty with the current solutions out there is that they can be falsified. So there is a really steep increase in selling fake certificates. And as you might have learned, the Europol has issued a warning already in February this year to its member states that they need to take care about that. And from our personal point of view, the regulation which came out in March is tackling this, as well as obviously the objective to enable free movement across the European member states for its citizens.
OK, so would people have it on their smartphone? And for those who don't have a smartphone, what happens to them?
The major objective is non-discrimination. So there are two perspectives to that. The first is you do not need to be vaccinated. You can show that you are negative in terms of a test, or you can show that you have recovered from an infection earlier. So you do not need to be vaccinated. That's the first part in terms of non-discrimination. The second is you do not need to be connected to the digital environment. So you can get this vaccination, recovery, or test certificate on a piece of paper as well as on a digital phone. So you do not need to be part of this digital economy if you don't like to. Obviously, it is possible and it is more comfortable depending on what kind of guy you are, but it's not necessary. The main connecting part of it is a QR code, which can be printed on a piece of paper and can be part of a wallet pass. And this QR code is digitally signed, so it is possible to verify the authenticity of the data encoded in this QR code. And so you will not be able to use a fake certificate anymore.
OK, and when do you expect it to be rolled out across Europe? What dates are you working towards?
In fact, we were quite lucky. So our company is a cybersecurity company. Our main mission is to enable trust between people who do not know each other. So we've been building that kind of infrastructure already last year in terms of COVID test certificates, which has been used throughout German airports. And we added the vaccination part beginning of this year. So we've been in the lucky position that we have everything in place. We just needed to adapt a little to the requirements of the EU, which means that in Germany, we will roll out the infrastructure in June, totally in line with the requirements of the EU. And as this is proven, stable, and at market technology, we are also talking to countries who are not as lucky, and we are trying to support them in order to reach the objective to be ready by July.
Karim, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much for letting us know how it's going. Karim Attia, Chief Executive of U-Birch there.
Thank you.
Still to come this morning here on Ian King Live, the impact the coronavirus pandemic has had on workplace mental health. Do stay tuned. Hello there, welcome back. You're watching Ian King Live. Some breaking news in the last few minutes for you. The High Court has found that Napier Barracks provided inadequate accommodation for asylum seekers, and the process for selecting people to be accommodated at the barracks was flawed and unlawful, and that residents of Napier Barracks were unlawfully detained under supposed COVID rules. Now, the claim was brought by 6 asylum seekers who were accommodated in Napier Barracks between September 2020 and February 2021. More on that for you at the top of the hour here on Sky News. Now, the events of last year and a half have affected each and every one of us. For some, there's been unspeakable grief, and for others, the loss of a job or livelihood. But for all of us, almost an impact in some way or another on our mental health. It means that companies have had to think more about how they support their staff, and many individuals have turned to different forms of support, like mental health apps. Let's find out more, shall we? We're joined now by Jolon Victor, Chief International Officer at Headspace. That is a company which is all about mindfulness and meditation. Good to have you on the programme. Thank you for joining us. We all know that mental health has been severely impacted one way or another throughout the pandemic. From where you sit, what's your assessment of how the last year and a half has been for office working people?
The last year has really been what we're considering to be the silent pandemic. Being kind to your mind and taking care of your mental health is just like brushing your teeth. And it's something that has had more attention and is at the top of the agenda for so many more companies. And so while it's an unfortunate reason why it's at the top of the agenda, we're happy that there's a destigmatization and a democratization of talking about your mental health.
We spent most of last year getting used to working from home. We know all the challenges around that. We're now getting used to going back into the office, commuting and everything else that's around that. So how bumpy could this transition be?
It's our first time coming out of a global pandemic and returning back into the office. So I would say be patient with yourself and talk about how you're feeling. The biggest thing that leaders can do is share their experiences and be vulnerable. We've learned that 43% of workers cause work-life balance as the #1 cause of their stress. And so the most important thing that you can do is share your experiences, share what it's like, that anxiety of maybe having children or family members be present on meetings where you like to separate work from home, and creating a space where employees can talk about the things that are challenging and for you to really listen to that.
Do you get the sense that people are looking forward to going back into the office? It's actually an opportunity to be sociable.
It's a hybrid, and that's the part that makes this so new and different. There's going to be people who 100% want to return back to the office, and there's going to be people whose social anxiety has been significantly increased over the past 12 months and may want to continue to work from home. And so organizations that are experimenting with hybrid workforces, I encourage everyone to experiment and find out what works for your employees. And if you think about it, approaching somebody now who's maskless could potentially create a significant amount of anxiety. And so creating a space where you're talking about that in advance and saying, hey, here's your preferences. Here's how we're going to respond to that. Here's how we're going to make every single employee feel safe when we return to work can make a meaningful and significant difference in the workplace.
And Jolon, just briefly, because we're running out of time, I'm afraid, but mental health, very much an issue we're all talking about these days. Is it high up enough the agenda of companies, do you think, generally?
Well, 89% of workers think that their organization should have a holistic mental health solution, but only 12% of organizations people think it actually exists. So I say the conversation, we're thrilled that it's continuing, but more and more companies can partner with organizations like Headspace. We have a Headspace for Work program that we have customized. Okay.
We need to leave it there. Jolon, thank you very much for joining us. Jolon Victor, Chief International Officer at Headspace.
Thank you.
There is much more on the Sky News mobile app and on the website with reporting, video content and analysis from our business team. I'm back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Sky News, top of the hour for you. All the breaking news. See you now.